2, 1.
Great. Thanks everybody for coming along. I know some of you travelled a long way to be here with us. This celebration of the North magazine, issues 64 and 65.
We have 11 readers tonight from all over the world, really, and we're also fundraising for the S2 Food Bank in Sheffield, and up to now we've got about £300 to donate to them. So it's not only high art, but it's a very good cause too.
Yeah.
And there'll be details at the end if people do want to donate something. But we're going to just hear from our readers, who will introduce themselves and tell us where they are at the moment.
Through the magic of modern technology, look at this. This is the previous issue. This is 64. 65 is just typeset now. It's going to the printers. So we'll be with everyone in January, a whole year away. Shall we just quickly run through the 11 readers?
Okay.
Some are from 64, some from 65.
Okay, so first of all, we'll have Susan Bedford, and Jennifer Compton, then Paula Cunningham, Michael Greavey, and David Harmer.
Yeah, and then Elbinson, who I believe is Danish.
Okay.
Helena Nelson, Orlagh O'Farrell, Pam Thompson, Shash Trevett, and your friend Lee Welch.
Yeah.
So we're in Sheffield, you know, and we know that Linda is in Sheffield, though she's not from Sheffield originally. Everyone's going to read one poem each, and we're hoping that everyone will say where they are from. And we're going to get underway.
Okay, so we begin now?
Yeah, we'll begin with Susan Bedford.
Okay.
I'm Susan, I'm in Doncaster in my dining room. All Saints' Day 2019. The same walk as Monday, only then the late afternoon October sun shone directly onto the green gold leaves against an azure sky. I told my painter and decorator about it. We got on to talking about the colour red. He told me that red attracts and then repels, and that's why red is used in fast food outlets, because it brings people in, but soon they've had enough of it and want to leave. Today, damp clogs the ground. The day seems to be in a waiting room, long overdue, having its name called out. At home, the 2 dogs sleep, the walk having taken it out of them. I wish I could do that. Put the washing out, have a nap, take a service, have a nap, exert myself over a few emails, nap. Autumn colours, like Harris tweed on town fields.
Thank you,
Hello.
Susan. Who's going to read?
Hello. Is it all working, I wonder?
It's all working perfectly.
Ah, that's
Hi,
great.
Jennifer.
I'm Jennifer Compton. I'm in Melbourne, Australia, where I'm just coming out of months and months and months of lockdown. And we've done very well. We have had 0 cases and 0 deaths for about 40 days, which is like a miracle. But I do come from New Zealand, and this is a poem about New Zealand. This is in the nature of a recovered memory. It's called Surely This is a Fevered Imagining. And there's a little epigraph. In 1966, Charlton Heston did come to New Zealand and play tennis. I am on my way to the Central Library on a thin, far away, long white cloud. So many people in my way on Mercer Street, a throng. They are all jazzed up and baying about a tennis match. I am after the books. I push on through. Come up against a most unusual creature, a man who is as tall as a tree, in tennis whites, a slazenger in hand, golden hairs upon his legs, a glow of rude health, such planes to his jaw, such luminous teeth, such an unusual colour to his skin. Is this what they call a tan? Although he is the very centre of this circus, he looks lost. He is making desultory strokes with his wooden racket. I glance up at him. It is a long way up. He glances down at the little miss that I am. It was as if he said, "What is going on?" It was as if I said, "You tell me." I gave him the freeze and sidestepped him.
Hi, I'm Paula Cunningham from speaking from Belfast, and the poem that I'm going to read is set in Spokane, which is a city in Washington State. Spokane. Your dirt brown rig, my bicycle, an ancient small-lad Schwinn that never failed. Before I split, I chained it to a tree. The furnace in the basement firing all of the apartments. Its knock and groan, no thermostats, and every window open. The Safeway on Division where the milk was so confusing. Those big brown paper bags that never split, the awful chocolate. The organic store that sold the best granola in the world. How proud you always sounded when you said it. I remember it was Huckleberry's Whole Foods and excessive. The veg were unattainably exotic. We'd rock up stoned to stare in people's carts. The light off snow that made a joke of eyelids could fade a yellow quilt before you knew. On Saturdays, garage sales lifted straight from Raymond Carver. The bar with ladies' restrooms, which were pink and undivided, so you got to sit and talk a while with strangers. This was David Lynch's birthplace, and it showed. The endless games of shuffleboard we never got the hang of, and Rainier beer, the second pitcher always, it's happy hour, the third is on the house. And right outside, the homeless guy who'd served in Vietnam, his cart served both as runaround and bed, whose gloved hands scooped the coins and slapped the pavement as he paddled to sleep some part of town we'd never venture. The night he doesn't show, the snow's let up, we've won our heat. A couple running find him 6 weeks later. How young we were, we didn't even know the river's name. My time there is a purse I never open. The least I could have done was leave the key. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. That was extraordinary, really good. And we've got Michael Greevy next.
Hi, I'm Michael. I'm from Littleborough, which is on the west side, on the near side of West Yorkshire. Despite the fur as good as dead, hacking the moth bush back to the egg, the fact we do not have a shed. The fairy door that will not close, one, no, two, garroted gnomes. The only note the black cap knows. Despite a sundial biding time, light in the plum tree, changing her mind, signs we do not recognize. Lopping the hedge off at the hip, cats we don't have, snug in the nip, stumps of things we can't undig. Despite the path that lost its way, A gargoyle's head with nothing to say shadows where our nippers play. The wobble in the boxwood bench, that damp patch that makes no sense, pervy holes in next door's fence. Despite the snails crooked underfoot, a goat bell's tongue scuzzed with rust, shady stuff the bees don't trust. Leaves off someone else's trees. Weeds we know now are not weeds, the question posed by millipedes. Despite the tit box facing south, ivy sleeking round the house, here doth lie a cold brown mouse. A wonky gate that wonks too much, the last bluebell trampled mush, twigs I told you not to touch. Despite the thistle ducking a mow, budging it open, wedging it closed, who was last to borrow the hose? The poppy head we cannot shake, spuds and daffs that didn't take, things I still forget to paint. Despite oxalis, fat hen, moss, Armageddons of 1 o'clocks, combing the lawn for what was lost. That toasty spot where nothing grows, cracks in gaps of walls and bones, the far end, far too near the road. Despite the stone from somewhere else, slugs like sucked fudge on a shelf, the hole I seem to dig myself. Whiffs of pickles, drain and pears, the bug motel that disappears, a clothesline greener every year. Despite the dog rose begging a stick, him next door a bloody good kick, the wishing well that doesn't wish, the baffled fern, a lack of light, mobs of jackdaws on the skive, the pot of time that doesn't try. Despite the flag that won't sit right, a bloated rat in the same space twice, flocks and wasps and rot and shite. Let's sit out, just me and you. Our plot, our patch, a glass or two. Kid ourselves, we've nothing to do.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michael. We've got David Harmer's just arrived, and David's reading to us. I think you're in Sprotborough, is that right?
I'm in Sprotborough, which is just outside Doncaster, well represented tonight. The Cultural Heritage Centre of the world, probably. So this is a poem about a covers band. Our Harriet's partner, Dave's a drummer, well, he was until COVID. He's got a proper job, but he's also a drummer in a covers band. And I often wondered if you ever have any ambition to write your own stuff. So I don't think he has. So this is a poem called Trio. Bass, guitar and drums, all smoking round the back of the bull's head. Inside, the wedding party cranks up the action. Disco boom beats rattle off walls. The band is knackered. One set down, another to do in 35 minutes. They got the first dance, realised now they won't be heard. Talked over, ignored. For the bar, the toilet break, the early leavers, or some who just wait for the late night DJ. Grime, banging tunes, fish and chips after. How many more of the money's great gigs? Covers, requests, Beatles, Tamla. How much longer until that golden moment, guests boozed up in red-faced abandon, bride and groom rocking, champers and coke. They play the songs no one has heard, slip into the mix all their own numbers. Never is when. Although nobody listens, there are rules. Stub out the smokes, go back, play Living on a Prayer. done her back in anger. Always the last time.
Ah, it was like being there, David, in that hotel. And now we have LB Jurgensen. She is.
Yeah, hello. I'm speaking from Copenhagen in Denmark. And this is a poem for Tibet. It's called Why Are They Building a Police Station in the Monastery? In front of the tomb, a woman teaches a little girl prostrations. They lie down, the curve over their backs smoothing out in a gesture of both supplication and strength. Monks in red watch pilgrims turn prayer wheels. Our guide looks at the corner of the stupa, where delicate wood carvings and gold tiles are surmounted by a camera. We'll talk about this later. Behind us, the girl places her hands, palm against palm before her face, kneels to stretch across the floor, a caterpillar yearning for flight.
Great, thank you. I'm going to come back up on screen now before we hear from Helena, from Nell, because Anna and I want to just say quickly something about these two issues of the North. One of the things that characterises our magazine is the generosity, not just of the poets. We're very lucky in having so many good poets who write for us, but also the feature writers and reviewers who come in and go beyond do the extra mile really for us. In the 46th issue, particularly wanted to mention that Pam Thompson, who's reading for us tonight, also wrote about James Schuyler and Elizabeth Bishop in a feature called Poets I Go Back To. Another one that that's always a popular thing that we run is Blind Criticism. Josephine Corcoran and Ben Bransfield in the last issue will get sent a poem that they'd not seen before, and then they had to write about. It's always sounds more terrifying than it is.
Yeah.
We always choose poems that we like, don't we?
Yeah, they're pretty brave about doing it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we always choose poems we like, so we hope that the people writing about it like them. No guarantee.
And another feature, close reading, fairly recent one, is where we ask a poet to choose a poem from a previous issue, and Jackie Wills chose a poem by Michael Lasky last time, and in the current one, when it arrives, you'll have Kim Moore talking about a poem by Meg Cox.
Yeah, that's got swearing in it, so if you're easily offended, I'm not going to say what you need to do if you're offended by it, but it's funny. And
it's to be expected because the poem of Meg's, although we had 6, didn't we, by Meg in that? This is the least serious, as it were, but it's called My Friend the Prize-Winning Poet. So, of course...
it's pretty nasty.
Yeah. It's very good of Nell to be reading for us next. She's just going to come up on screen, I think. Right now, thanks.
Okay, I'm in Fife, in Scotland, in tier 3. We have a lot of tiers around here. And this poem is called Close Enough. We have been close enough to the winning poets to see the whites of their eyes, as close as we wanted to go. But we haven't lived this day as if it were our last. We never do. If it had been our last, I can't think we would have lived it better than today, in the shed, in the garden, with the on and off sun and the pigeons and washing and cutting the grass. We would have been distracted by the asteroid and the pain anticipated of the end. We might not have bothered about eating. We lived today as if it was today. This was okay, or even better than okay.
Right. Thank you. Now, you didn't say, I don't think, now where you are, did you?
Yeah, in Fife.
In Fife. Good.
Okay, we now have Paula.
Paula, who's going to say this?
Hello, I'm reading from Dublin, and we've had our rules relaxed recently after more or less lockdown all autumn. So we're looking forward to a nice Christmas, but a very quiet Christmas. So I'm going to read a poem called Convent School, and it's an incident I remember from when I was very young in secondary school, about 13, 14, something like that, 15 maybe. Convent School. I never knew your name or saw your face clearly. I remember your slight frame, thin shoulders, short hair, your shabby flowered overall. As you bent over the boards, you were scrubbing with a stiff brush. I saw you were about my age, scrubbing the floor, while the nun and I stepped carefully over your outstretched, kneeling legs. I remember how you knelt amongst the suds, your face averted, how I briefly wondered who you were, why you weren't at school too. There on the other side of the mirrored door I'd never been through before, that led from busy school to convent, all stillness and beeswax perfume. How I went back to school while you stayed scrubbing the floor, nuns stepping carefully over your childlike kneeling legs. Thank you.
Well done, thank you.
And now it's Pam Thompson.
Pam, you're mute.
Okay. I'm reading from Leicester, back in Tier 3, and this is Last Tube. Forgetting they can move now, living statues stand very still on the escalators. Two nuns, painted silver, even their eyelashes, wear headphones. One of them is texting. Tonight, no drunks to harangue Marie Antoinette. Her crinoline takes up a seat on her either side. The workman in orange jacket and trousers could have just knocked off from a shift laying cables, if we ignore his orange face and hands. A Pierrot and a Charlie Chaplin laugh at something from the day, their eyes red-rimmed under makeup. Half human, half myth, with coats draped over togas and armour, they grace our journey, even though we're the kind of passers-by who would take photos and give nothing in return.
That's a really good poem, isn't it? And it's of this time, really, I think. Pam, that's really a good poem. Shash is next, and I think you're in York, is that right?
Yes, I am. Hi, I'm reading from York. I was Naama. I was known by many names, and now by none. I was Naama, the pleasant one, mother to all creation. The hourglass gathered pace in my shadow. I was Emzara, Betanos, Barthanon. Wheat and millet swayed to my song. Around my feet grew common reed, papyrus sedge, and bulrushes. I was haikul in Arabic. Through my mouth, sunrose flowers, blue pimpernel, and yaknuk spoke a language of their own. Cumin and chamomile formed my veil. In Georgian, I was Taja, a temple. Bitter herbs formed my seat. Out of my left arm grew olive trees, cypress and cedar of Lebanon, red bush, date palms and myrrh out of my right. I was Nemzar in Armenian. I knew every lacewing of every petal, every wrinkled bark, each sharp thorn. I twirled every leaf in dewdrops and hid a covenant into each rotund kernel. I was Emzara, no Emzar, Noria to the Gnostics. The Babylonians called me Taitia. I was the sunrise of creation, the moonglow of eternity. In the book of Jasher, I was Naama, the pleasant one. Now I am only the wife of Noah. Thank you.
That's a wonderful poem, Shash. Thank you. Before we hear from the final reader this evening, Linda, I thought I'd read a poem from issue 64 by Jean Stevens, who's can't be with us. I wanted to read it for two reasons. One is it's called 2020, and it seems to sum up something about the pandemic year, which has made, there's no two ways about it, it's an awful time, and it's almost seems trivial talking about poetry when so many people have died and there's so much hardship and debilitating illness. But nevertheless, poetry has been, hasn't it, for so many people, consoling, and something that's happened which we wouldn't have expected is this, what we're doing now, this, the way we're connected in the way we never have done. In the time that we've been doing writing workshops, for example, Zoom has brought people, as tonight, from across continents, and there's something really weirdly personal about the screen that we wouldn't have expected.
Yeah, that's true. And it is that idea of poetry as an international language, really, at a time when there are so many divisions and countries separating and, you know, dissent, really, that it's really a pleasure to us to know that everywhere people are reading poems and reading more than they were before, and writing to a standard which has been astonishing this year, perhaps almost as a result of people being isolated. It's been, you know, the quality of the writing we've really noticed this year has been affected by, you know, by people being locked down and separated from each other. So
yeah,
it's
something
been
about
fruitful.
The anxiety, perhaps, that's made people more in touch with their dream lives. I know that people, anecdotally, have been saying as much. We first heard about Zoom perhaps at the beginning of, this time last year, probably, from David Tate, one of our poets who lives in China. And of course, that's where it was all happening. This awful thing was happening, this strange, awful, but faraway news item that was the beginning of the pandemic starting there. And he told us about Zoom and how useful he'd found it as a teacher. And we were very pleased that in the last issue, we had 3 poems by David about the pandemic, which really worth reading. But I'm going to, as I said, I'm going to read this poem by Jean Stevens called 2020, partly because Jean was on the first ever Arvon online course that Anne and I had the privilege to teach back in July, 30 years after we taught our first real Arvon at Longbank. Jean wrote this poem then and there, and we don't often take poems from workshops that we've run, but it was so apposite that we couldn't resist taking it. 2020, Jean Stevens. I'm in the bathroom, upside down, trying to reach the loo. She's in a helicopter looking for forest fires. Others are being fed grapes in the land of milk and honey, pushing the world to hell. Get yourself back, get yourself home. There's a queue of ghosts waiting, along with a judge and jury frowning. But next to you is Marilyn Monroe. Seen it all, she drawls. Most of it is shit. There's a sense of peaceful armies forming in upside down sideways here. Tigers and jaguars take up positions in the aisles. They know they're superior. Out of a cloud steps a woman, her hair a halo of red. She stretches her arms to heaven. She's going to save us all. But the rich are clutching dollar bills, stashing their bullion. There's nothing so hard and so heavy as an ingot of gold. Gene Stevens. And I do want to say that most of the magazine, and particularly the new issue, the latest issue, seems particularly uplifting when we were proofreading it. It opens with some amazing poems by David Constantine. And there are a number of spreads by people that are really remarkable, I think. It's one of the things that is common, I think, to poets. Poets, generally speaking, feel that their latest poem is their best, if not the best written by anybody. Maybe it's the same for editors, that the latest issue seems the best, but these two issues do seem to be special because of the time that they were written, as much as anything. This is a long introduction for you, Linda Lee, yeah.
Okay.
So here's Linda Lee Welch.
Oh, great! You had time to put your hat on.
I did. And before I start, can I just say I'm so moved and amazed by this, Anne and Peter, Ellen and Katie as well. Thank you so much for allowing a chink, of light into this time. And forever, for years you've been doing it. I don't wear hats because I've got claustrophobia of the head, but it's the poem I'm reading. And I'm Linda Tier 3 Lee Welch in Sheffield, sadly. Houston is a huge sprawling city with its, orchestra, theater company, ballet company, all that stuff. It's a lot going on. Plenty of rednecks and guns as well, as you'd imagine. But spitting distance, about 50 miles south, there's a little town called Pearland, which has a whole different host of Texans. One of them was my Aunt Maxine, my late Aunt Maxine, who is one of the lights of my life, and I stay with her a lot. But Pearland's so different from Houston, it's hard to explain. But in honor of this, I'm wearing my late father's Texas Stetson. It's about 40 years old, this hat. So I thought, in memory of Daddy. The Pearland Boys. The Pearland boys are shaving their legs right up to the knee, unheard of before in this redneck neck of the woods. Curtis burned a big C on his arm with a paper clip, some clan instinct kicking in, and these shit kickers are making ready. They'll fly down the field with balletic grace, toes pointed in accusation. You've got our balls now. This curfew, this crackdown. Let's see who ends up running this town. Ricky tries a pass to Vern, but his head is turned, watching the crowd who shout out loud at his inattention to the game. It's a shame, they say while they watch him play. The kids these days never suffer like we did. No.
Thank you, Linda Lee. It was fabulous. And the hat. Oh, I see your tech support has arrived as well. That's very good. Yeah. Some applause.
It is great. We're going to end now, rather gone more quickly than we expected. And one of the things that I'm always saying is it's great to hear poems twice, but we won't do that. I'm going to read another poem, this time by David Constantine from the new issue. I'm reading it off the screen. It's a poem called Jimmy Night, which begins, "Waking this morning, I remembered Jimmy Night from Hope Road Primary School." And I think it's probably true. David Constantine, I think it's just about to be announced, has won the Queen's Gold Medal for poetry. And we're very pleased to hear that. We first encountered David years ago. We recorded David actually for our audio series. And this poem by Jimmy Night is one of a sequence and two poems, and it's particularly optimistic because although it is a typical kind of Salford of the last century poem with this really deprived society and this boy who was particularly in a difficult way, it's the love that comes through from David via the teacher, Mrs. Thomas. It's six line stanzas, and it ends with some masks at the end of the poem. Jimmy Night by David Constantine. Waking this morning, I remembered Jimmy Night from Hope Road Primary School. Every kid could tell what sort of a family life every other kid had, but how they were shot by how they were shod and clad and fed, and whether they looked you in the eyes all right and smiled or never did, and they could tell them by their smell. Jimmy had none of the good signs and all of the bad. I remember his scared white face, the snot and elsewhere of him that was damp. But one last lesson of the afternoon, all the lights were on, smog at the windows, and in her normal voice, Mrs. Thomas said, "Come out the front, Jimmy love, and sing to us." And doing as he was told, that's what he did. Came out the front and wiped his nose on his jersey sleeve, covered the wet with his hands, and lifted up his eyes towards something he could see and we could not, and sang us "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," but without the words, if I recall it right, or none we understood, though a blackbird might, for all I know, or the angels, I suppose. Pure melody it was, pure caroling, the breath of clearness, always near, or perhaps already gone beyond a world of tears. Clean, lovely, it soared and dipped and soared again. It was grace, what he'd had given him, not asking why, he gave. Till he stopped and returned from wherever he'd been, stood still, eyes down in the silence. And Mrs. Thomas said, "Thank you, Jimmy love." And the small, soiled lad went back to his place and looked the same, and outside was the smog that dripped from the skies and left black on the masks we wore to school and home. David Constantine. Thank you everybody for reading tonight from all around the world, including two people from Doncaster.
Yes, of course, as David Harmer said, the cultural capital. Thank you everybody for reading, and thank you to all the people who donated towards the food bank. There will be some details at the end about how to donate if you want to do that now.
We know there have been over 100 people, well over 100 people online watching this, so we're very pleased that you've come and supported us. The North magazine depends on its readers as well as its writers, and it's a privilege 35 years in to still be publishing the magazine that I know the highest accolade we've ever had was when someone took the copy of the magazine up with him to his allotment and he didn't do a stroke of work all day.
He wrote his letter of complaint saying, I've got things that I need to be doing this week in my allotment, and I've spent the whole day in my shed reading the North. I object to this.
Yeah.
So we apologise to him.
So we couldn't hold up gardeners without your support. So thanks very much, everybody. It's been great seeing you all.
All right, thank you.